Part 2. The head of the Korean Mafia was secretly following his maid, and what he found out made him fall in love with her. If you love stories of forbidden romance and dangerous secrets, subscribe now and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates. Now let's begin. 5 years had passed since Kang Jae-won and Park Soo-min's wedding. 5 years of peace built on unstable foundations, of happiness stolen from the shadows, of love that defied all odds. But in Seoul, a city of glittering lights and buried secrets, peace never lasts forever. The call came at 3 a.m. Jae-won woke instantly. Years of training transforming sleep into alertness in less than a second. Soo-min stirred beside him, murmuring something incoherent. He touched her face gently before answering. "Sir." Secretary Yoon's voice was strained in a way Jae-won rarely heard. "We need to meet, immediately." "What happened?" A pause. "Too long. Your father. He's alive." The world stopped spinning. Kang Min-ho had died 15 years ago. Jae-won was certain of this because he himself had given the order. He had watched the body being carried away. He had stood beside the grave while dirt was thrown onto the coffin. He had felt the weight of that decision every day since. "That's impossible," he said, but his voice sounded distant, as if it belonged to someone else. "I know, sir, but we have proof. Photos, recordings, testimonies. He's alive, and he's coming back." Jae-won hung up the phone and stood motionless in the darkness for a long moment. Soo-min was fully awake now, sitting up in bed with concern stamped on her face. "What is it? What happened?" He turned to her, and for the first time in years, Soo-min saw fear in her husband's eyes. Real fear, the kind that comes from facing something you thought you had buried forever. "My father," Jae-won said slowly, as if testing each word. "He's alive." Soo-min felt her blood run cold. She had heard the stories about Kang Min-ho, the brutality, the cruelty, the way he had beaten his own son and let his wife die from neglect. Jae-won rarely spoke of him, but when he did, his voice carried the weight of old wounds that had never fully healed. "How is that possible? You told me he died years ago." "I thought he did." Jae-won ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of vulnerability she rarely saw. "I was wrong." He began to dress, his movements mechanical, automatic. Soo-min got up and grabbed his arm, forcing him to look at her. "Whatever this is," she said firmly, "we face it together, remember?" He looked at her, this woman who had saved him in ways she would never fully understand. The fear in his eyes softened slightly, replaced by something warmer. "I remember," he said. "But Soo-min, my father, he's not like Junik or any of the enemies we've faced. He's worse, much worse. Then tell me everything." And so, in the gray light of approaching dawn, Jae-won finally told his wife the complete truth about his past. Kang Min-ho had built the BO syndicate from nothing. He had started as a street thug in Busan, working his way up through violence and cunning until he controlled half the organized crime in South Korea. He was brilliant, ruthless, and completely without mercy. Men who crossed him didn't just die, they disappeared, along with everyone they had ever loved. He believed in making examples, in ensuring that the price of betrayal was so high that no one would ever dare consider it. Jae-won's mother had been Min-ho's one weakness, the only person who could reach the humanity buried deep inside him. She was a teacher when they met, gentle and idealistic, everything he was not. Their courtship had been a scandal. Her family disowned her. His associates questioned his judgment. But Min-ho was obsessed with her, and what Kang Min-ho wanted, Kang Min-ho took. For a while, they were happy, or at least, as happy as anyone could be living in the shadow of such darkness. Jae-won was born, and Min-ho seemed to soften slightly. He would come home earlier, spend time with his son, even laugh occasionally. Those were the golden years, though Jae-won only recognized them as such in retrospect. When his mother got sick, everything changed. At first, Min-ho spared no expense. The best doctors, the most advanced treatments, private rooms in the finest hospitals. He sat by her bedside for hours, holding her hand, whispering promises that everything would be all right. But the illness dragged on. Months became years. The costs mounted, not just financially, but emotionally. Min-ho began to resent her weakness, her needs, the way she diverted his attention from his empire. He started making excuses to stay away, delegating her care to nurses and servants. He stopped paying for the experimental treatments, said they were too expensive, that they weren't working anyway. Started spending more time with his lieutenants than at her bedside. And when she finally died, hollow-eyed and abandoned in a hospital room that had once been full of flowers but now stood empty, he showed no grief at all, only relief. Jae-won was 12 years old. He had watched his mother fade away, had begged his father to do more, to try harder, to care, and he had learned a lesson that would shape the rest of his life. Love, in the Kang household, was conditional, and conditions could always change. He killed her, Jae-won said flatly, not with his hands, but with his indifference. He let her die because she had become inconvenient. Sumin's heart ached for the boy he had been, the boy who had watched his mother fade away while his father counted money and built his empire on the bones of the innocent. What happened next? Minho became worse. Without my mother to soften him, there was nothing holding back his cruelty. He beat me for the smallest mistakes, locked me in dark rooms for days, told me constantly that I was weak, worthless, a disappointment. He said I had too much of my mother in me, that I needed to have it beaten out. Jae-won's voice was steady, but his hands were clenched into fists, the knuckles white with tension. When I turned 17, I started planning. I watched everything he did, memorized his patterns, identified his weaknesses. I spent 3 years building alliances, finding people within the syndicate who hated him as much as I did. There were more than I expected. My father had made many enemies, even among his own men. He paused, lost in memory, and when I was 20, I made my move. I had everything planned to the minute. His security rotation, his meeting schedule, the loyalty of his closest guards. I bought them all, turned them all. When the moment came, my father didn't even see it coming. You killed him. I thought I did. Jae-won shook his head slowly. I ordered his death, watched his body be taken away, attended his funeral, but apparently, I was deceived. Someone saved him. Someone smuggled him out and let me believe the lie for 15 years. By who? That's what I need to find out. The meeting with Secretary Yun took place in a secure location, an underground bunker beneath one of their legitimate businesses that few people knew existed. The walls were reinforced concrete, the door 3 inches of solid steel. No signals came in or out without explicit permission. The evidence was spread across a table, damning and irrefutable. Photographs showed an older man with Jae-won's eyes, but harder, crueler. He was thinner than he had been, his face more lined with age, but unmistakably Kang Min-ho. The same cold gaze, the same predatory posture, the same aura of barely contained violence. These were taken 3 days ago in Singapore, Secretary Yun explained. Our contact there, a former associate who has been monitoring certain individuals for us, recognized him immediately. How? Jae-won demanded. How did he survive? Who helped him? We're still investigating, but from what we've gathered so far, one of your lieutenants at the time, a man named Cho Sung-jin, arranged the deception. He was in charge of body disposal. He switched the corpses, smuggled your father out of the country, while everyone else believed he was dead. Cho Sung-jin, Jae-won repeated. The name was familiar. A ghost from his early days of leadership. He was loyal to my father from the beginning, one of his original men from Busan. Yes, sir. He served you faithfully for 2 years after the coup before dying in what was reported as a car accident. Apparently, not an accident. Secretary Yun's expression was grim. It seems your father eliminated him once he was no longer useful. We found records of a significant payment to Sung Jin's family shortly before his death. Hush money, we believe. Jae-won studied the photographs, searching for something he couldn't name. Answers, perhaps. Or maybe just understanding of how he had been deceived so completely. Why now? He's been in hiding for 15 years. Why reveal himself now? Secretary Yun hesitated. Speak, Jae-won commanded. Our intelligence suggests he's been building his own organization. Different territory, different operations, but substantial. He started small, in the ports of Southeast Asia, and has been expanding steadily. Human trafficking, drug manufacturing, weapons dealing, all the things you've moved away from. He's been watching me, Jae-won realized. Yes, sir. For years, he's been monitoring your transformation of the syndicate, your marriage, everything. And there are rumors that he's made contact with several of your current enemies. The remnants of the Huang clan, the Chen family in Hong Kong, others. He wants revenge. Yes, sir. And he wants what you took from him. He wants the syndicate back. Jae-won straightened, and the fear that had clouded his eyes began to transform into something else. Something harder, colder, more familiar. The ghost of Gangnam, dormant for years, began to stir. Then he'll have to take it from me. The first attack came 3 days later. Suman was at the hospital with Han, now a bright 10-year-old who had developed a fascination with medicine. The girl spent hours watching medical dramas, asking questions about procedures and diagnoses, declaring with absolute certainty that she would become a doctor someday. Suman encouraged this dream, seeing in Han's passion the same determination that had driven her own survival all those years ago. They were visiting the children's ward, where Han volunteered every Saturday. The hospital had been one of Jae-won's first major philanthropic investments, transformed from a struggling public facility into one of the best pediatric centers in Seoul. Han loved coming here, reading stories to young patients, playing games with children who were too sick to leave their beds. Suman watched her niece with pride, as the girl made a sick boy laugh with her animated reading of a fairy tale. She did different voices for each character, jumping up and down with excitement during the action scenes. The boy, pale and thin from chemotherapy, giggled with genuine joy. This was the life they had built, a life of purpose and connection, of using their resources to help rather than harm. Jae-won had taken the dark empire his father created and was slowly, painfully, transforming it into something better. It wasn't perfect. There were still shadows, still compromises that made Suman uncomfortable, but there was progress, real, meaningful progress. She didn't notice the men approaching until it was almost too late. There were 4 of them, dressed as hospital orderlies, but moving with military precision. Their uniforms were slightly wrong, the shoes too practical, the posture too alert. Suman's instincts, sharpened by years of living in Jae-won's world, screamed a warning. "Han," she said quietly, keeping her voice calm and steady. "I need you to go find Nurse Kim right now, but I'm not finished with the story. The boy wants to hear the ending. You can come back and finish it later. Right now I need you to go." Something in Suman's voice made the girl look up. She had learned in her years with Aunt Suman and Uncle Boss to recognize when adults were serious. This was one of those times. "Okay," she said, standing slowly, "but I'm coming right back." She slipped away just as the first man reached for Suman's arm. "Mrs. Kang, you need to come with us." "I don't think I do." The man smiled coldly. He was muscular beneath the orderly uniform, his hands rough and scarred. That wasn't a request. Suman had learned things over the past 5 years. Jae-won had insisted on self-defense training, and she had taken to it with the same determination she applied to everything. Master Choi, the instructor Jae-won hired, had been skeptical at first. He trained professional bodyguards and special forces operatives. What could he possibly teach a former housekeeper? But Suman had surprised him. She wasn't strong, wasn't fast, wasn't naturally aggressive, but she was smart, observant, and ruthlessly practical. She learned to read body language, to anticipate attacks, to use her small size as an advantage, rather than a weakness. She wasn't a fighter, not really, but she knew how to survive. She grabbed the man's wrist as he reached for her, twisted it at the angle Master Choi had taught her, and drove her elbow into his throat. He stumbled back, choking, eyes wide with surprise. The second man lunged at her, and she sidestepped, using his momentum against him, pushing him into a medication cart that crashed to the floor with a tremendous noise. Bottles shattered, pills scattered everywhere, and the man went down in a tangle of metal and plastic. The third and fourth men were more cautious now, circling her, blocking the exits. "We don't want to hurt you," the third man said. "Not permanently, but we will if you don't cooperate." Hospital security responded to the noise within seconds. Alarms blared, running footsteps echoed in the hallway. The attackers, realizing they had lost the element of surprise, exchanged glances. "We go," the leader said. Now they fled. But not before the third man called out a message that made Suman's blood run cold. "Your father-in-law sends his regards, Mrs. Kang. He says he's looking forward to meeting you, and meeting that pretty little niece of yours, too." Suman stood in the chaos of the hospital corridor, her heart pounding, surrounded by confused security guards and frightened staff, and understood with terrible clarity that the peace they had built was officially over. Jae-won's rage when he learned of the attack was terrifying to witness. He destroyed his study, the antique desk his mother had loved, smashed to splinters, the bookshelves she had filled with classics, overturned and scattered. He put his fist through the wall, through the window, through anything that got in his way. Blood streamed from his knuckles, but he didn't seem to notice or care. Secretary Yun and the other lieutenants stood frozen by the door, none daring to intervene. They had seen their boss angry before, had witnessed his cold fury in countless confrontations, but this was different. This was primal. Uncontrolled, dangerous, only Suman could approach him. She walked through the destruction calmly, stepping over broken glass and splintered wood, until she stood directly in front of him. Jae-won. She caught his bleeding hand, held it between her own despite his attempts to pull away. "Look at me." He was breathing hard, his eyes wild with a fury she had never seen. This wasn't the controlled leader she knew. This was the boy who had been beaten by his father, the young man who had plotted revenge for years. The monster he worked so hard to keep contained. "He tried to take you." His voice cracked. "My father tried to take you. Tried to take Han. He failed. This time. What about next time? What about the time after that?" He looked at her with anguish in his eyes. "I can't protect you from him, Suman. I thought I killed him. I was sure of it. And I was wrong." "If I was wrong about that, what else am I wrong about?" Suman cupped his face in her hands, forcing him to focus on her and nothing else. "You're wrong about not being able to protect us. You're wrong about this being your fault. And you're wrong if you think I'm going to let you face this alone. You don't understand." Jae-won's voice dropped to a whisper. "My father, he's not like other men. He doesn't have limits, doesn't have lines he won't cross. He'll go after Han. He'll go after Grandma's grave. He'll go after everyone you've ever spoken to, everyone you've ever smiled at. He'll burn down everything we've built and make me watch. Then we stop him. How? He's had 15 years to plan this. 15 years to build his resources, recruit his allies, study our weaknesses. He knows everything about us. We know almost nothing about him. We're playing catch-up in a game he started before we even knew we were playing. Suman was quiet for a moment. The room was silent except for Jae-won's ragged breathing and the distant sound of servants trying to figure out what was happening. Then she said something that surprised everyone in the room, including herself. Maybe we need to change the game. What do you mean? Your father expects you to fight like he would. Violence for violence. Power against power. He wants you to become him, to prove that you're really his son, that all your talk of change was just weakness waiting to be exposed. Jae-won flinched at the words. But that's not who you are anymore, Suman continued. That's not how you've operated for years. You've built legitimate businesses, formed alliances with people outside the criminal world, created goodwill in communities that used to fear the BO name. You have resources he doesn't even understand. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we use everything. Politicians who owe you favors, business leaders who benefit from your investments, law enforcement contacts who would rather see your father gone than back in power, media connections who could expose his operations to the world. We fight him with everything we have, not just guns and soldiers. Secretary Yun stepped forward hesitantly. Mrs. Kang with respect. Kang Min-ho is not the kind of man who can be defeated by political maneuvering. He's survived this long precisely because he operates outside those systems. No, Suman agreed, but he can be contained by those systems, isolated, cut off from the resources he needs to operate. His accounts frozen, his allies pressured, his operations exposed. He can't run an empire if no one will work with him. No one will hide him. No one will do business with him. She turned back to Jae-won. We turn his own strategy against him. He spent 15 years building up strength in secret. We spend 15 days. 15 weeks if we have to, tearing it all down. And while he's dealing with pressure from all sides, while he's scrambling to hold on to what he's built, that's when we find him. That's when we end this. Jae-won looked at his wife with something like wonder. When did you become a strategist? I've been watching you for 5 years. Listening. Learning. Some things rubbed off. Despite everything. Despite the blood on his hands, and the destruction around them, and the terror of what was to come. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. My wife. The general, your wife, the person who is not going to let your monster of a father destroy our family. The plan took shape over the following weeks. Jae-won reached out to his contacts in the government, calling in favors he had accumulated over years of careful relationship building. Minister Park in the Justice Department had a gambling problem that Jae-won's people had helped keep quiet. Deputy Director Choi at the National Intelligence Service had a son who had gotten into trouble at university. Trouble that had mysteriously disappeared. Senator Kim had accepted campaign contributions that weren't entirely legal through channels that couldn't be traced. One by one, Jae-won collected on these debts. He didn't threaten, didn't need to. The implications were clear. Help me, or I stop helping you. Investigations were quietly opened into organizations connected to Min-ho. Bank accounts in Singapore, Malaysia, and Thailand were frozen by authorities suddenly interested in money laundering. Shipping companies that had moved his goods found their licenses revoked for safety violations. The construction firms he used as fronts were subjected to tax audits that would take years to resolve. The net began to tighten. At the same time, intelligence operations intensified. Every resource the BO syndicate possessed was directed toward finding Kang Min-ho's location. They tracked his money through a maze of shell companies and offshore accounts. They monitored communications channels, looking for patterns and connections. They interrogated former associates, offering amnesty or threatening exposure, whatever it took to get information. Slowly, painfully, a picture emerged. Min-ho had based himself in Singapore, but had operations throughout Southeast Asia. His organization was smaller than BO but more vicious, specializing in the kinds of activities Jae-won had abandoned years ago: drug trafficking, human smuggling, contract killing. The darkness Jae-won had tried to escape, his father had embraced completely. He's built an empire in my shadow, Jae-won realized during one late-night strategy session. Everything I stopped doing, he started. Everything I gave up, he took. He's trying to be what he thinks you should have been, Suman said. The son he wanted. I was never going to be that son. Not even when I was following his orders, not even when I was living in his house. There was always something in me that resisted. Your mother, Secretary Yun suggested quietly. Jae-won nodded slowly. She taught me, without ever saying the words directly, that there was another way. That strength didn't have to mean cruelty. That power didn't have to mean destruction. I forgot that for a long time after she died. But it was always there waiting. Suman took his hand, And that's why your father will never beat you, because you have something he doesn't. What? Hope. You believe things can get better. He only believes in power and control. When those fail him, he'll have nothing left. The war, because that's what it was despite the lack of open battles, continued for weeks. Minho's attacks became more frequent, but also more desperate. A car bomb that destroyed one of Jae-won's warehouses, but killed no one. A cyber attack that temporarily disabled their banking systems, but was traced back and neutralized within hours. Threatening letters sent to Han's school, which only resulted in increased security and police involvement. He's testing us, Jae-won said during a strategy session. These attacks, they're not meant to succeed. They're meant to provoke, to make me emotional, to force me into mistakes. Then we don't give him what he wants. Suman replied, we stay calm. We stay focused. We stick to the plan. But it was hard to stay calm when threats seemed to come from every direction. Han's school received bomb threats. The girl had to be pulled from classes, educated at home by private tutors. She didn't understand why she couldn't see her friends, why she had to have bodyguards everywhere she went. She became withdrawn, sullen, scared in ways she didn't know how to express. I want to go back to normal, she told Suman one night, tears streaming down her face. I hate this. I hate all of this. Suman held her close. I know, sweetheart, I know. It won't be forever. Promise? I promise. It was a promise Suman wasn't sure she could keep, but she made it anyway, because that's what love required. Hope in the face of despair. Businesses connected to the syndicate were vandalized, windows smashed, fires set, employees threatened. Some of them, the legitimate ones that employed ordinary people with ordinary lives, began to suffer. Workers quit out of fear. Customers stayed away. The dream of going fully legal began to seem more distant than ever. 3 of Jae-won's trusted lieutenants were killed in separate incidents, each one a message from his father. Lieutenant Park, who had been with Jae-won since the beginning, was found in his apartment with his throat cut. The word traitor was carved into his chest. Lieutenant Choi, who had helped plan the original coup against Minho, was shot during his morning jog. The killer was never found. Lieutenant Nam, who had overseen the legitimate business operations, was killed in what was staged to look like a robbery gone wrong. But the message was clear. No one is safe, Minho was saying. No one who stands with my son is beyond my reach. The psychological warfare was relentless. Minho wanted his son to feel hunted, helpless, afraid. He wanted to reduce Jae-won to the frightened boy he had once been. The child who flinched at every raised hand and cowered in dark rooms waiting for punishment. But Jae-won was not that boy anymore. I received another message from my father, he told Suman one evening. They were in his rebuilt study, the new furniture still smelling of fresh wood and leather. What did he say? He wants to meet, just the 2 of us. No weapons, no guards, father and son, talking about the future. Suman's jaw tightened. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap, but he's also scared. The pressure is working. His accounts are being frozen faster than he can open new ones. His allies are starting to distance themselves. The Chen family in Hong Kong sent word yesterday that they're ending their partnership. He's running out of options. So what do you want to do? Jae-won was quiet for a moment, staring at the photograph of his mother that had been restored to its place on his desk. I want to end this, one way or another. The meeting was arranged for neutral territory, an abandoned factory complex on the outskirts of Seoul. The location was symbolic, chosen by Minho himself. It was the same factory where he had committed his first murder 50 years ago when he was just a young man clawing his way up from nothing. Both sides agreed to limited security, a pretense of good faith that neither believed. Jae-won would bring Secretary Yun and 5 guards. Minho would bring equivalent force. They would meet in the main floor of the factory, surrounded by the ghosts of industry long dead. Jae-won arrived first, as was his habit. He liked to survey territory before any engagement, to identify exits and sightlines and potential ambush points. The factory was cavernous and dark, filled with rusted machinery that hadn't operated in decades. Rain leaked through holes in the roof, creating puddles that reflected what little light filtered through the grimy windows. He stood in the center of the space and waited. When Kang Min-ho appeared, emerging from the shadows at the far end of the factory, Jae-won felt something twist in his chest. 15 years had aged his father significantly. The man who had once seemed like an unstoppable force of nature, a titan who could crush anything in his path, now walked with a slight limp. His face was weathered and worn, marked by years of hiding, of running, of building from nothing once again. But his eyes were exactly the same, cold, calculating, empty of anything resembling humanity. Those were the eyes that had watched Jae-won's mother die without shedding a tear, the eyes that had overseen beatings and murders and atrocities without flinching, the eyes of a monster wearing human skin. Son, Minho's voice carried across the space between them. You look well, successful. I suppose I should be proud. You should be dead. Minho laughed. It was an ugly sound, without warmth or humor. I've always appreciated your directness. You got that from me, you know. Your mother was too soft, too sentimental, always trying to see the good in people, even when there was no good to see. Don't. Jae-won's voice dropped dangerously. Don't speak about her. Why not? She was my wife. I knew her far better than you ever did. I knew every weakness, every fear, every naive little hope she carried in that fragile heart of hers. You let her die. I made a practical decision. Minho shrugged, as if discussing the weather. She was a drain on resources that could be better used elsewhere. Her illness was expensive and ultimately futile. Why prolong the inevitable? Because you loved her, or at least you claimed to. Love. Minho spat the word like a curse. Love is what weak men call their dependencies. I depended on your mother for a time. She served a purpose. When that purpose ended, so did my patience. Jae-won's hand twitched toward his gun, but he controlled the impulse with enormous effort. He wouldn't give his father the satisfaction of seeing him lose control. Why are you here? He demanded. After 15 years, why come back now? Minho's expression shifted. Something almost like honesty broke through the mask of contempt, revealing the man underneath, or what was left of the man, at any rate, because I'm dying. The words hung in the air between them. Cancer, Minho continued, his voice matter of fact. Stage 4, liver and lungs, spreading to the bones. The doctors give me 6 months. Maybe less if I'm lucky. He smiled thinly. Ironic, isn't it? I let your mother die of illness, and now illness is claiming me. The universe has a cruel sense of humor. Forgive me if I don't weep. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't want it. I've never apologized for anything in my life, and I'm not going to start now. What I want is legacy. Legacy, Jae-won repeated flatly. I built the BO Syndicate from nothing, from a single knife in a Busan alleyway to an empire that made us one of the most powerful families in Korea. I created something that commanded fear and respect across the entire country. And you, Minho's face twisted with disgust. You've spent years dismantling everything I accomplished, going legitimate, investing in hospitals and schools like some kind of philanthropist, turning my wolves into sheep. I made us better. You made us weak. You took everything I built and turned it into a charity operation. The BO name used to make grown men tremble. Now it sponsors little league teams and funds cancer research. Minho shook his head slowly. You've betrayed everything I worked for. I improved everything you worked for. Improvement. Minho laughed again. Is that what you call it? Abandoning the drug trade that funded our operations for decades, dismantling the human trafficking networks that brought in millions every month, going soft, going legitimate, going pathetic. I call it evolution. I call it being smart enough to see that the old ways were leading nowhere but prison or death. The world is changing, Father. The syndicates that cling to the past are being destroyed. The ones that adapt are surviving. And you think adaptation means becoming a businessman, a philanthropist, a respectable member of society? I think it means finding a way to protect what matters, to build something that lasts beyond a single generation. Minho stepped closer, his eyes burning with intensity. What matters? You want to know what matters? Power matters. Control matters. The ability to crush your enemies and take what you want. That matters. Everything else is window dressing. Comfort for cowards. Is that why you're here? Jae-won asked. Alone, dying, hunted by authorities in 6 countries? Is that what your power and control got you? It got me 68 years of living exactly as I chose. 68 years of never bowing to anyone, never apologizing, never compromising. Can you say the same? No, and I'm grateful for it. Father and son stared at each other across the ruins of the factory, across the chasm of 15 years of separation and a lifetime of pain. So this is about pride, Jae-won said finally. This is about blood. Minho's voice dropped to almost a whisper. You are my son. Whether you like it or not, my blood runs in your veins. My legacy should run through everything you do, and I will not die knowing that my life's work has been reduced to a charity operation run by a man who was too weak to be what he was born to be. You don't have a choice. You're dying. Remember? Minho smiled, and it was a terrible thing to see. Predatory, cruel, utterly without remorse. That's why I'm not going to kill you, boy. I'm going to kill her. Jae-won's blood turned to ice. Your wife, Minho continued conversationally. She's the one who changed you. Before her, you were still my son. Ruthless, efficient, willing to do what needed to be done. You might have softened the operations a bit, but you were still Kang Jae-won, the ghost of Gangnam. His smile widened. But after her, after that cleaning woman got her hooks into you, you became something else. Something soft, something weak, something I don't even recognize. He shook his head with exaggerated sadness. Remove her, and you'll become what you were always meant to be. My true heir, the man who will carry on my legacy whether he wants to or not. If you touch her, Jae-won said, his voice deadly quiet, I will make you pray for death long before it comes. Big words, but you forget, son. I know you. I raised you. I created you. I know every weakness, every fear, every soft spot you try to hide, and I know that despite all your posturing, despite all your speeches about being better, There's a monster inside you, the same monster that's inside me. Minho leaned closer. All you need is the right motivation to let it out. Kill your wife. Kill that little girl you're so fond of. Kill everyone who makes you soft. And the real Kang Jae-won will emerge, the one I trained, the one I made, the one who will carry my legacy into the next generation. Jae-won moved before he even realized he was moving. He closed the distance between them in 3 steps, drawing his gun in a motion so smooth it looked choreographed. He had his weapon pressed against his father's forehead before anyone else could react. Secretary Yoon and the guards tensed. Minho's men, lurking in the shadows, reached for their weapons. The moment balanced on a knife's edge. Give me one reason, Jae-won hissed. One reason not to finish what I should have done 15 years ago. Minho didn't flinch, didn't even blink. If anything, he seemed pleased. Because if you kill me here, my people have orders to attack everyone you love. Your wife, that little girl she's so fond of, the old woman's grave, every friend, every ally, every person who has ever smiled at you. They'll all die, slowly. You're bluffing. Am I? Minho's eyes gleamed with malicious pleasure. You know me, son. You know I don't bluff. I made arrangements years ago. Dead man switches in a dozen locations. Kill me, and the orders go out automatically. And I promise you, what will happen to your precious family will make everything I did to you as a child look like a gentle caress. The seconds stretched like hours. Jae-won's finger rested on the trigger. The pressure was there, just a fraction away from ending everything, from killing the monster who had haunted his entire life, from finally being free. But his father's words echoed in his head. If he pulled this trigger, could he live with the consequences? Could he sacrifice Suman, Han, everyone he loved for the satisfaction of revenge? The monster inside him screamed yes, screamed that nothing mattered except destroying this creature who had caused so much pain, screamed that the world would be better off with Kang Minho dead, whatever the cost. But the man Suman had helped him become said no. He lowered the gun. Minho's smile widened into a grin of triumph. I knew it. I knew you didn't have the strength. Your mother's weakness, showing through again. This isn't weakness, Jae-won said quietly. This is strategy. He stepped back, putting distance between them. His gun returned to its holster. His breathing slowed, steadied, became controlled again. You're right that I've changed, he continued. But you're wrong about why. I haven't gone soft. I've learned that there are more effective ways to destroy an enemy than putting a bullet in their head. Minho's smile faltered slightly. Your accounts are frozen. Your allies are abandoning you. The authorities in 6 countries are building cases against you. The Chen family cut ties yesterday. The Vietnamese connections are being investigated as we speak. And now, thanks to this meeting, I have a recording of you confessing to planned murders. Jae-won pulled out his phone, showed it to his father. The recording app was clearly visible, the timer showing how long their conversation had been captured. Every word you said is documented. Your threats against my wife and child. Your plans to kill them. Your orders to your men. And in about 10 minutes, copies will be delivered to every law enforcement agency in Southeast Asia. Minho's face went pale with rage. You think that will stop me? I've evaded authorities for 15 years, when you had resources, when you had allies, when you had time. Jae-won's voice was calm, almost gentle. You don't have any of those things anymore, father. You're a dying man with no money, no friends, and now no escape. I'll kill her, Minho snarled, all pretense of composure gone. I'll kill them all before they can take me. No, you won't. On cue, Secretary Yoon and the guards stepped forward, but they were not alone. From other parts of the factory, from shadows and hiding places, more figures emerged. Men in suits who were clearly not syndicate members. These gentlemen are from Interpol, Jae-won explained, his voice steady. They've been very interested in your activities. I promised them full cooperation in exchange for protective custody for my family and immunity for certain past activities. You brought the law? Minho's voice rose to a shout. You brought the law against your own father? You're not my father. You're the man who murdered my mother and spent my childhood beating me. You're a monster wearing human skin, and today the world finally gets to see you for what you really are. Minho looked around, finally understanding the trap that had closed around him. His men were outnumbered. His escape routes were blocked. His leverage was gone. You planned this. He breathed. From the beginning, the meeting, the location, all of it. You lured me here. I learned from the best. You always said to know your enemy better than they know themselves, to anticipate their moves before they make them, to turn their strengths into weaknesses. Jae-won paused. I was paying attention during all those lessons, father, even the ones you didn't intend to teach. Minho's face contorted with fury. Then, suddenly, it went slack. The anger drained away, replaced by something Jae-won had never seen in his father before. Resignation. So this is how it ends, Minho said quietly. Outsmarted by my own son. Betrayed by my own blood, captured instead of killed. This is how it ends. Jae-won agreed. Min-ho looked at him for a long moment, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time since Jae-won was a small child. "You're more like me than you want to admit," he said finally. "No," Jae-won replied. "I'm exactly who I want to be. That's the difference. You were always trying to force me into your mold, to make me a copy of yourself. But I chose a different path. I chose to be better, and that's something you'll never understand." The Interpol agents moved forward, handcuffs ready. Min-ho offered no resistance. There was no point anymore. The game was over, and he had lost. But as they led him away, he called out one last time, "She'll destroy you, son. That woman you love so much. Love always destroys men like us. You'll see. One day, you'll understand that I was right all along." Jae-won watched his father being taken into custody, watched the monster who had haunted his entire life being reduced to a handcuffed old man shuffling toward a prison cell. And he felt something shift inside him. A weight he had carried for 30 years began to lift. "Maybe you're right," he murmured. "But if love destroys me, at least I'll die happy. That's more than you can say." The aftermath was complicated, as such things always are. Kang Min-ho was extradited to Singapore, where he faced charges that would keep him in prison for whatever remained of his life. The evidence against him was overwhelming. Not just the recording from the factory, but years of documentation that had been gathered by authorities who were only too happy to finally have a chance to bring him down. His organization crumbled quickly without his leadership. The lieutenants scattered, some fleeing to other countries, some trying to negotiate immunity in exchange for testimony. The operations Min-ho had built over 15 years were dismantled in a matter of weeks, absorbed by various rivals or shut down by authorities. The BO syndicate emerged from the crisis stronger than before, though not in the way Jae-won had expected. His willingness to work with law enforcement, his strategy of using legal pressure rather than pure violence, earned him grudging respect from both the legitimate and criminal worlds. He was seen as a new kind of leader, one who understood that the old ways were dying, that adaptation was the only path to survival. But more importantly, the crisis had revealed the depth of support he had built over the years. Employees who could have fled had stayed. Allies who could have abandoned him had stood firm. Even some of his rivals, people who had every reason to want him weakened, had refused to cooperate with Min-ho. "You've built something real," Suman told him one evening after the worst of the crisis had passed. "Something that isn't based on fear. I built it with you," he replied. "None of this would exist without you." She smiled and took his hand. "We built it together. That's how it works." The months that followed brought gradual healing. Han returned to school, surrounded by security but slowly regaining her confidence. She had nightmares sometimes, dreams about men in hospital uniforms chasing her through endless corridors. But with time and therapy and love, the nightmares grew less frequent. The legitimate businesses recovered, stronger than before. The hospital expanded its pediatric wing. The technology investments began paying dividends. The charitable foundations reached more communities. Jae-won still carried the weight of his past, the people he had hurt, the choices he couldn't undo. But he also carried hope now, the belief that redemption was possible, not through grand gestures, but through daily choices. Each day, he chose to be better than the day before. Each day, he chose love over fear. Suman insisted on visiting Min-ho in prison before his death. Jae-won argued against it. His father was still dangerous, still manipulative, still capable of causing harm even from behind bars. The man had spent his entire life finding ways to hurt people. Why give him another opportunity? "I need to understand," Suman explained. "I need to look him in the eye and understand what made him the way he is." "Why does it matter?" "Because that same potential exists in you." She held his gaze steadily. "In everyone, really, but especially in you. You've spent years fighting against it, trying to be different, trying to be better. I need to know what we're fighting against so I can help you fight it. You're fighting for me. I'm fighting with you. There's a difference." He couldn't argue with that. He never could argue with her when she was right. The prison in Singapore was clean, modern. Nothing like the dark dungeons of imagination. Sterile corridors, efficient guards, careful procedures. Min-ho was kept in a medical wing, his cancer requiring treatment even as he served his sentence. He sat across from Suman in a visiting room, separated by glass. He looked even older than before, the disease visibly eating away at him. His skin was paper thin, his eyes sunk deep in their sockets, but the malice in his gaze was undiminished. "So," he said, studying her with the same cold calculation he had once used to size up business rivals. "The woman who stole my son. I didn't steal anything. I helped him become who he was always meant to be. A cleaner, a housekeeper." Min-ho's lip curled. He could have had princesses, could have had the daughters of presidents and crime lords. Instead, he chose you. "Yes," Suman agreed simply. "He did. You must be very proud of yourself." "I am, actually. Proud of him. Proud of us. Proud of what we've built together." Min-ho seemed thrown by her directness. He had expected fear, perhaps. Nervousness, at least. This was the man who had tortured and killed, who had threatened her life and the life of a child. By all rights, she should have been terrified. Instead, this ordinary woman faced him with perfect calm. "Why are you here?" he demanded. "To tell you that you failed." Suman leaned forward slightly, her voice steady. "You tried to destroy him when he was a child. You tried to break him with beatings and cruelty. When he grew up, you tried to take everything he built with threats and violence. But you failed. He's stronger than you ever were." "Is he?" Minho sneered. "Because from where I'm sitting, he looks like a man who was too weak to kill his own father." "That's exactly my point." Suman's voice remained calm, patient, as if explaining something to a child. "Killing you would have been easy. Any fool with a gun can kill. What Jae-won did was harder. He beat you at your own game, using strategy and patience and allies you never even knew existed. He proved that he's not just different from you. He's better than you in every way that matters." "Better." Minho spat the word. "He's softer, weaker, more willing to compromise. He's capable of love. That makes him stronger. Not weaker. Love, that word again. Carrying contempt. Love is what weak people use to justify their dependencies. It's a chemical reaction in the brain that clouds judgment and creates vulnerability. Is that what you really believe? That's what I know. I've seen it countless times. Men destroyed by their feelings for women, children, families, brought down by the very things they thought made them strong. Then explain your mother. Minho went very still. Your wife, Suman continued. Jae-won told me about her, about how you pursued her, obsessed over her, made her the center of your world, about how you sat by her bedside for hours when she first got sick, about how losing her destroyed something inside you that never grew back. That's different, is it? It sounds like love to me. The kind of love you claim makes people weak, but it made you do extraordinary things, didn't it? Made you softer, kinder, more human. Until you got scared. I wasn't scared. You were terrified. Suman's voice was gentle now, almost compassionate. You loved her so much that the thought of losing her was unbearable. So instead of staying with her, instead of being there as she died, you pushed her away, let her go. Told yourself it was practical, but really you were just running from your own feelings. Minho said nothing. His jaw was clenched. His hands gripped the arms of his chair so tightly the knuckles had gone white. And then she died, and you had to live with what you'd done. You had to face the fact that you abandoned the only person you ever loved. So you buried those feelings, turned yourself into stone, convinced yourself that love was the enemy, that caring about anyone was weakness to be exploited. Stop. You became a monster because it was easier than being a man who had failed the woman he loved. I said stop. Minho's voice cracked. Suman stood. The visiting time was almost over anyway. I didn't come here to hurt you, she said. I came here to understand. And now I do. What do you understand? That you and Jae-won aren't so different. You both loved your mother. You both lost her. The difference is what you did with that pain. You let it destroy you. You let it make him better. She turned to leave, then paused. He forgives you, or at least he's trying to. Not for your sake, but for his own. Because carrying that hatred was poisoning him, making him more like you. He's choosing to let it go. And you? Minho's voice was barely a whisper. Do you forgive me? No. You threatened to kill me. Threatened to kill a child I love. There are some things that can't be forgiven. Then why are you here? Because my husband needed me to see that there was a human being behind the monster. Because knowing that makes it easier for him to heal. She walked to the door. Goodbye, Mr. Kang. I hope you find some kind of peace before the end. She left without looking back. The years that followed were the happiest of Jae-won's life. Not because everything was perfect. Life was never perfect, and the scars of his past never fully healed, but because for the first time, he had what he had never believed possible, a family, a purpose, a future worth living for. Han graduated from high school with honors and announced her intention to become a doctor. She wanted to help children, she said, the way people had helped her grandmother all those years ago. She wanted to give back what she had received. Jae-won paid for her education without hesitation, the best medical school in Korea, followed by a fellowship in the United States. He watched her grow from a frightened child into a confident young woman and felt something his father had never known, genuine paternal pride. She's going to change the world, he told Suman one evening as they watched Han receive her white coat at the medical school ceremony. She already has. Look how many lives she's touched already. The syndicate continued its transformation. By the time Han entered medical school, nearly 70% of its operations were legitimate. The rest were carefully managed, gradually phased out or handed off to allies who still operated in the old ways. Jae-won was becoming what he had never imagined possible, a businessman, a philanthropist, a respectable member of society. The transition wasn't easy. There were people who saw his legitimization as weakness, as an opportunity. There were challenges from rival organizations, attempts to take advantage of what they perceived as his softness. Some of these challenges required a firm response, a reminder that the ghost of Gangnam still existed beneath the businessman's suit. But for the most part, the transformation succeeded. The Kang name, once whispered with fear, began to be spoken with respect, even gratitude in the communities where their charitable work made a difference. Min Ho died in prison 6 months after Suman's visit. Jae-won received the news without emotion. He had long since made his peace with his father, or as much peace as was possible given everything that had happened. He did not attend the funeral, did not claim the body, did not shed a single tear, but that night, alone in his study, he poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He drank one and left the other untouched. "To the man you could have been," he said quietly, "and to the man I chose to become instead." He sat in silence until dawn, remembering and releasing, letting go of the last chains that bound him to his past. When Suman found him in the morning, he was standing at the window, watching the sun rise over Seoul. The city sprawled beneath them, a sea of buildings and streets and millions of lives being lived. Somewhere out there, people were waking up, going to work, falling in love, facing their own struggles and triumphs. "Are you okay?" she asked, slipping her arms around him from behind. He turned to her, and she saw something in his eyes she had never seen before. Complete peace. "I'm free," he said. "For the first time in my life, I'm actually free." She kissed him gently. "Then let's make the most of it." The years continued to pass, each one bringing new joys and new challenges. Han completed her medical training and became a pediatric surgeon, one of the best in the country. She married a kind man named Jung Ho, a fellow doctor who made her laugh and supported her ambitions without jealousy. They gave Jae-won and Suman 2 grandchildren to spoil, a boy named Min, in honor of the grandfather he never knew, and a girl named Yuna, after Jae-won's mother. The choice of the boy's name surprised everyone. "Are you sure?" Suman asked when Han announced it. "After everything his grandfather did, the name isn't the man." Han replied, "Grandfather Min Ho made terrible choices, but he was also the man who loved his wife so deeply that losing her broke something inside him. I want my son to remember that love can be powerful enough to destroy us if we're not careful with it." She looked at Jae-won. "I want him to grow up knowing that he comes from a complicated family, that good and evil aren't always simple, that the same blood can produce monsters and heroes, depending on the choices we make." Jae-won felt tears prick at his eyes, something that happened more often now that he was getting older. "I think that's very wise," he said. "I learned from you," Han replied. "From both of you." The syndicate completed its transformation on Jae-won's 60th birthday. The last of the illegal operations were shut down or handed off. Every business under the Kang umbrella was now fully legitimate. The accountants were boring. The lawyers were corporate. The only guns in the organization were carried by licensed security personnel. "It's done," Secretary Yun announced at the celebration. "After 40 years, we're finally what we set out to become." Secretary Yun himself had aged considerably. His hair was white now, his face lined with decades of service. But his eyes were still sharp, still watchful, still utterly loyal. "You've served this family for 50 years. Jae-won told him, "Through my father's reign and mine, through the dark times and the light, it has been my honor, sir. I think it's time you retired, enjoyed life a little, found out what you've been missing." Secretary Yun's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes, surprise perhaps, or uncertainty. "What would I do, sir?" "Whatever you want. Travel. Read. Fall in love. You've spent your entire life serving the Kang family. Spend the rest of it serving yourself." Secretary Yun was quiet for a long moment. "I'll think about it," he said finally. He did retire eventually, bought a small house near the ocean, took up fishing of all things. He lived another 10 years, peaceful years, free from the violence and intrigue that had defined most of his life. At his funeral, Jae-won wept openly. The man had been more of a father to him than his actual father had ever been. Jae-won and Suman grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They fought sometimes, disagreed often, and challenged each other constantly. They had arguments about money and grandchildren, and whose turn it was to choose what to watch on television. Small arguments, domestic arguments, the kind of arguments that only happen when 2 people are completely comfortable with each other. But they never doubted that they belonged together. On their 40th wedding anniversary, they returned to the hospital where they had first faced danger together. It was barely recognizable now, transformed from a struggling public facility into one of the best pediatric centers in Asia. The Kang Foundation had funded expansion after expansion, adding wings and equipment and programs that served thousands of children every year. "Do you remember?" Suman asked as they walked through the gleaming corridors. "Those men who tried to take me." Jae-won's arm tightened around her instinctively. "Even after all these years, I remember wanting to burn the world down to find you, and I remember knowing that you would come. Always," he said. "I'll always come for you." They visited the children's ward, where young volunteers read stories to sick patients. The tradition Han had started all those years ago had grown into a formal program, with dozens of volunteers and hundreds of children served. "She loved coming here," Suman said. watching a teenage girl make a sick boy laugh with her animated reading. I think it was when I knew she was going to be someone special. She was always someone special, just like you. Suman looked at him, this man who had been monster and savior, enemy and lover, stranger and soulmate. What made you save my grandmother all those years ago? She asked. You never really explained. Jae-won was quiet for a moment, remembering that young woman who had argued semantics with a crime boss in his own kitchen. I told you that you reminded me of someone I used to be. I remember. I lied. He smiled softly. You didn't remind me of anyone. You were completely new, completely unexpected. Someone who should have been afraid of me but wasn't. Someone who was carrying an impossible burden but never complained. Someone who made me feel, for the first time in years, that maybe there was more to life than power and control. So it wasn't strategy. It was falling in love. He admitted, before I even knew what was happening. You walked into my kitchen and changed everything. Suman took his hand. We changed each other. Yes, he agreed. We did. The end came peacefully, as such things go. Kang Jae-won died in his sleep at the age of 82. His wife was holding his hand, as she had held it through triumph and tragedy, through joy and sorrow. Through all the years of their extraordinary life together, he slipped away in the quiet hours of the night, between one breath and the next. No pain. No struggle, just a gentle release, like a long-held sigh finally let go. Suman didn't cry at first. She sat beside him as the dawn light crept through the windows, holding his hand even though it was growing cold. She remembered the first time she had seen him, terrifying in his power, and the first time he had smiled at her, revealing the lonely boy beneath the monster's mask. She remembered their first kiss.